Hey, my name is Beau. I'm a music teacher and musician, and in this video, I want to talk about organizing your practice sessions. So, what I find happens to a lot of musicians, they're fired up to practice, hopefully, uh, at least most of the time. And, they sit down to practice and there's really no structure to what they're doing. I mean, often what happens with beginners is they want to learn a piece and so they just dive in on that. And that's fine. I don't think, absolute beginners don't necessarily need to get too crazy about practice schedules and practice strategy and stuff like that. They just probably need to play more. But I do find that a lot of musicians, they waste a lot of time in the practice room and they just don't get enough out of the time they're putting into the practice sessions. And that can, we fast forward a few months, that can feel a little demotivating, that can feel a little frustrating. And so, there's a couple strategies you can use to remedy this. And one of the most simple ones, honestly, that I don't think enough people use is to actually just write out a plan for what you're going to do. And so, you could have a little whiteboard next to your practice session or next to your piano or whatever you're playing. You could use a notebook. You could use, it doesn't even matter. You could use a Google Doc. But literally just before you practice, think, okay, how long am I going to be practicing for? I have 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And what do I want to work on? I want to work on, I have this Bach piece I'm going to work on. I have, this technique I got to do. I got to do some sight reading. I want to listen to music, whatever it is. I'm not saying you have to work on anything specifically, but a good place to start is to just do a quick brain dump of all the things that are on your mind musically. What are the projects that you have to be working on? What are the things that interest you? Create a little mind dump, and then, after you have a list of whatever it is, 5 or 10 things, think about how much time you've dedicated to practice in this session, and literally just assign a time value to each thing. And, right away when you mention this to people, a lot of people do not like this. And so I'll be the first to admit this is not everyone's cup of tea. Not, a lot of the times musicians don't like being structured. They don't like doing this kind of thing. They kind of just want to do what they feel like doing. And if that's working for you, I mean, it's not my place to tell you what to do in the practice room. If you're having fun and you're learning effectively, then, do whatever you want to do. That's fantastic. I just personally find that I'm the kind of person where if I sit down, I mean, I really like improvising when I'm practicing, and that can get carried away. Before I know it, I've spent 20 minutes improvising, and I've spent 0 minutes working on a new piece that I actually had the intention of sitting down to do. And so this strategy where you create a list of what you want to be working on, you assign a time value, so maybe I'm going to do this for 5 minutes, and then this for 10 minutes, and then this for 20 minutes. It can just allow some structure to surface out of the session. And so a lot of the times when I do this, I'm not really worried what order I do things in. So I might make a list of 10 things I want to do, and I'll do them all for 5 minutes or all for 8 minutes or whatever I'm feeling that day. And, I just set a timer on my watch or on my phone or whatever, and the timer goes off and I cross that off, and now I move on to something else. Timer goes off, cross that off, and move something else. I don't spend all my time practicing like this, but, usually some of the practice sessions I have in the day are structured like this, and it's kind of crazy how much better I find most people focus when they do something like this. A big problem that a lot of musicians can have is knowing when to stop and move on to something else. And so, the trombone professor online, Jason Solomon, who has a great YouTube channel and a lot of great material on there about learning music and practicing, he talks about there's kind of this spectrum between people who hop around endlessly, maybe more on the kind of ADHD side of the spectrum, where they need lots of novelty and they need lots of variety. And then there's people that are more on the OCD side of the spectrum who they want to beat a dead horse. They want to play the passage 100 times. They want to go beyond mastery. They really want to just crank on it as much as they can. And that's one way of framing it. And so you can probably figure out where you sit on those two spectrums. I mean, are you the kind of person that goes over the top and plays something 900 times in a row? Or are you the kind of person that doesn't play things enough and you kind of play something once or twice and then you hop to something else? And so you can kind of use this scheduling as a way to offset your natural inclination to go too far in one direction. And so what I find is that I'm the kind of person that will do too much of one thing. I'm the kind of person that won't move on. And so when I say I'm going to work on these 16 bars of this Bach piece for 10 minutes, and the timer is going to go off, when that timer goes off, then it's time to do something else. You know, it's a little if-then plan. If the timer goes off, then I move on to the next thing on my list. It allows you to just kind of get used to moving on. And I think this is one thing that I would have benefited from a lot when I was, you know, a teenager and working on classical guitar stuff. I was a good practicer. I could go deep. I could practice for 45 minutes or so, but I wasn't really getting the most out of my practice session because there was no logic or rhyme or reason. And, you know, it just turned out that if you play guitar for 5 hours a day, you turn out fine because you're playing so much, and if you're working on things that are new and challenging for you, you know, like I said earlier, you don't really need to be overcomplicating it. But by making a structure, it allows you to start getting strategic. And one of the very powerful things about being able to follow a structure is when you learn new things about the science of practicing. So, you know, maybe you read Molly Gebrian's new book on practicing, which is fantastic, by the way. You should look up Molly Gebrian. Her YouTube channel is wonderful. Her book's wonderful. Go follow Molly Gebrian. She's probably my favorite single voice in the sphere of practicing music. But anyways, if you read that book and there's all these new things that come at you, you're like, wow, I could do interleaving where I work on 3 things, you know, all kind of mixed up together. Or I could take more advantage of the spacing effect. I could work on this Bach piece for 10 minutes, take 20 minutes to do something else, come back to the Bach piece for 20 minutes. You know, there's all these principles of learning that are out there in cognitive science and in neuroscience and in all that kind of stuff, in learning theory. And if you have the ability to make a schedule for yourself in the practice session and follow it, you now have the behavioral, like overarching behavioral tool already in place to immediately insert anything else. And so a great example of this, like I said, is the interleaving and the spacing effect. So a lot of musicians aren't aware of how powerful both of these, you know, principles of learning are. But in a nutshell, you will learn better when you space things out, not only, you know, on a micro scale over minutes and whatever, but on longer time scales like hours and days. And if you know that, like say for example, I have 3 different things I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to master, you know, bars 1 to 4 on this Bach piece. I have this right hand thing I'm doing on the guitar, and then I have this ear training thing I'm trying to get together. I'm trying to hear these chord progressions. The way a lot of people will schedule their practice session is like 15 minutes Bach, 15 minutes right hand arpeggios, 15 minutes ear training, and it just turns out that that's not actually, you know, the most optimal way to set it up in almost every circumstance. And so it can seem a little odd to do something like this, but if you did, you know, 3 or 5 minutes of each one in a row and kept cycling through. So it's like Bach, right hand technique, ear training, 3 minutes each, and then you cycle back around. Bach, right hand technique, ear training, and you keep doing that. I mean, that would be, that's kind of like straddling the spacing effect and interleaving, depending on how you define them. But what I'm getting at is that that is shown to be much better for skill acquisition, for motor skills, for cognitive skills, for retention of the skill over time. Like if you didn't do those things, let's say you practice like that today, you know, 15 minutes of everything versus 3 minutes of everything, kind of jumbled up like that. If you did nothing for the rest of the week and then we checked in with you in a week, if you mix your practice up like that, you'd be way better off. It doesn't feel as effective in the moment, but you are better off. And so that's an example of how if you have the ability to schedule your practice sessions, you learn something new like that, you can immediately insert it into your practice routine. And so that's just a very basic kind of encouragement that I would give you to kind of try putting a bit more structure into your practice routine. I mean, you get a lot of musicians who immediately have their guard up against that. They're like, I'm an artist, I don't like structure, I don't like this stuff. That's fine. If you don't like it, don't do it. But I also wouldn't feel like you can't do it. You know, there's nothing wrong with putting a little bit of structure in your practice session if you find it's helpful for you. And that's really the key point here is, you know, the pragmatic position says, do what's helpful for you. So try this. If you don't think you're the kind of person that enjoys the structure, I mean, are you just basing that off of just a gut level reaction, or have you actually tried putting structure into things and seeing if it's helpful or not for you? I mean, and that's why I'm passionate about this, is because I thought I was the kind of person who didn't like structure, who needed to kind of have a lot of freedom to kind of just do whatever I want. And then I started structuring things and learning more things and enjoying playing music more. And I'm like, wow, I really feel like being structured is misrepresented as being not musical or not artistic. So, I'm very undogmatic about what people do. I think you should try things and see what works best for you. And I personally find benefit in, structuring, I don't know, 3/4 of my practice and just doing whatever I feel like 25% of the time. I think that's a good ratio for me and for many people. So I'm not saying make spreadsheets for everything you do and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying try bringing a little bit of intentionality to what you do when you're trying to work on something that's challenging. I mean, if you just want to sit down and play the guitar or play piano or whatever and have a good time, that sounds great. There's nothing wrong with that. So, that's just a bit of a basic overview on taking advantage of some planning, some intentionality. So my name is Beau. I'm a music teacher and musician myself. I offer online piano lessons, online guitar lessons. I also offer online coaching if you're trying to get your practice routine together, or if you have a musical project that you're struggling to finish. I love doing coaching sessions with serious musicians, whether you're an intermediate or you're professional, just people that are taking their musical development seriously. It can be very beneficial to have someone to check in with weekly about your project, to make some kind of plans, to assess whether your strategies are working or whether you need to be working a little harder or even backing off and taking more breaks. So that's something that I offer. If you're interested in that, shoot me an email, send me a comment on this video. Anyways, have a wonderful day, and thanks so much for tuning in.